Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Teri
and Edith Show.
Yes, indeed. Teri, you were away on a writer's retreat. Tell me and our listeners all about it.
Well, first of all, oh wow, if you can find a way to get away for 3.5 weeks and do nothing but write, I highly recommend it. It was unbelievable. So I was at a place called, it was in Woodstock, New York, and it was called,
Is it
go ahead.
That Woodstock?
Yes, the Woodstock.
But-
And nothing has changed since 1969. I swear to you, it's identical, except that the people have gotten older, but everything looks, it's very, very 1960s American hippie.
Okay, but hopefully they do have a shower.
Yes, there were showers. There were showers. Thank goodness. But no, it still just keeps that vibe. So I was at a place called Bird Cliff, and it was an artist colony back in 1902 is when the first buildings were built. And they would bring in artists who would stay for periods of time in these buildings, and they would do their art, and then they might leave and new ones would come in. And since 1902, they have always had artists coming in and out. It's no longer an artist colony. It's been taken over by a nonprofit. They bring artists in. At some point, they determined writers were artists too, and they started letting, the writers come in. And so I was in a building called Eastover, and there was another one, Valletta, and then there were a lot of single cabins for people who were there for longer than I was there. So some people go up for 2, 3, 4 months, and so they get their own space. And it was amazing. I've not been able to write. As you know, my husband passed away in January, and so I've had nothing to say. I think I've had a lot to say, but no way to say it.
Yeah.
And I really wondered when I got there, am I going to be able to write, or is this a big waste of time? And I almost felt bad taking the residency because I thought, what if I get up there and I'm wasting time?
Yeah.
Well, I got up there the first night. We had this big meal together. We kind of learned there were some rules mostly about like what to do with the trash and how to handle bears, things like that. And so, we had this little rule thing. And immediately after that, I thought, I think I can write. There was something about being with all of those artistic types all in one space, and the creative energy was just like creeping out over everyone. And so I did. I started to write, and I wrote 2 flash fiction pieces and a short story, part of another short story, and over 50,000 words towards my next manuscript.
Well,
So I got a lot done.
Yeah. And you also took quite some walks in the woods.
Lots of walks. Yeah. I think for me, I love walking at the beach. That's where I live, is at the beach, and I go down to the beach. But for me, walking outside, being in nature, especially first thing in the morning, which is when I really like to go, it kind of like clears my head of junk.
Yeah.
So like if I have things that are bothering me, I can like clear that up while I'm out walking. And then the beauty of whatever I'm seeing starts to like hit on all of my creative receptors or whatever it is. I don't know. And then by the time I get back from that, I'm ready to sit down and write.
And
so
what happened during those, let's say, creative sessions? Did you have some sort of workshops, or did you just come together to talk about what you wrote? What was it like?
We had a few get-togethers, but they were mostly like getting to know one another. We didn't have any how to do, because we had writers and painters and a photographer and a playwright and someone who made masks and someone else who was doing some kind of animation stuff. So it was a wide variety of people there. But we did get together, I think it was like on day 3, and we all had 7 minutes where we could talk about what we were doing. And so I just read a quick little piece of something that I was working on. And then at the very end, they had a showcase. So for those people who had visual art,
Mhm. Mhm.
they they had their studios open and people could come in and see.
Ah,
And then
okay.
for those
Mhm.
people who were like me, who had the spoken word, or the
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
we got to stand up and read. And so I read a
Mhm.
little bit from my 10 Little Rules for Double-Bit Adventure and then a little bit from my daughter's The Green Mountain Gap. And so it was a lot of fun.
I can imagine. And what else did you do? I mean, did you have to cook for yourselves? That's something
Yes.
I got from you taking photos at the market and so on. So there was nobody
Yeah.
there who took care of you. You had to take care of
No, you
yourselves.
have to take care of yourself. We had one communal meal when we first arrived because they knew
Yeah.
most people were coming in and probably wouldn't have stopped at a grocery
Mm.
store. And several people flew in or came by train or whatever. It's not like they had a chance to go to the
Yeah.
grocery.
Yeah.
So we had a communal meal. And then another time, we all decided that we were going to do a potluck. So everybody cooked a little something and brought it all together.
Okay.
And then on the morning before we left, a lot of people realized that they had a lot of breakfast food still left. So we brought it all into the kitchen and we had pancakes and blueberry compote and watermelon and everything, just whatever was kind of left. And we just had a huge meal. So we did that a few times. And then there were a couple of times where I ate with someone where I'd say, hey, why don't you bring some of what you have? I've got stuff for a salad. Oh, I have chicken. Great, bring it over. And then we would do that. So, but mostly I just went to the farmer's market and I ate
Mhm.
a lot of they had a wonderful bakery, and so I kept
Mm.
getting the sourdough bread, which I absolutely love and do not know how to make on my own. So I would get my sourdough bread, and then I had some local cheese that was unbelievable, unbelievable, and then tomatoes that were huge and thick and juicy and fabulous, and I would cut big slices of those, plop them on a piece of bread, and call it dinner. Like,
Yeah,
what
why
more do you
not?
need out of right, so I did very little actual cooking when I was
Yeah.
there. I did get a chicken one time that had been rotisseried at the grocery store, and then I ate off of it. I just really peaches, lots of peaches, some watermelon. I just pretty much ate what I could find at the, farmer's market, and then every now and then a little something extra
Mm.
because, I
Mm.
couldn't find a rotisserie chicken at the farmer's market.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but what about your writing routine? Did it, well, differ a lot from what you usually do at home? Or would you say you try to stay the same? Because when, in case you got out of your routine, you might not get back into it again.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't have a routine. I've not written in so long, I didn't even know what that
Mm,
would look like, and my whole life has changed. I
mm,
had a routine before, but I had a husband at home, and so I had things that I did, and now I'm
yeah.
alone. So, what I kinda just wrote when I wanted to. So, I got
Mhm,
up in the morning and usually went for a walk or did
mhm,
something a little bit physical, came back, um if I was hungry, I would grab a peach or something to
mm,
kind of, like, stave off that. Uh, Sit for a few minutes. I like to, like, look at my email and get all that stuff that might be bothering me, like what could have come in, and I get that all out of the way,
mm,
and usually by about 9 or 9:30 in the morning, I started to write, and I would write until about 2 in the afternoon, and then my room would start feeling a little warm, and
yeah,
so then
okay.
I would get out, and I would go do other things, and about
Mm,
5 o'clock, I would come back, eat my dinner, and then I would write again for another 2 or 3 hours. So I often wrote for 6 or 7 hours a day.
yeah,
Now, how productive was it? I mean, some days it was really productive.
yeah.
Like, some days I would be done and I would think, "Oh my gosh, I've written 3,500 words." And other days it'd be like, "Oh, look at me, I wrote 400 words." I mean, it's but you know how that is. If all of a sudden you had a breakthrough and you're like, "Oh, I know what's gonna happen next," and you just start going,
Yeah. If you're in the flow.
yeah. And then some
Yeah.
days I just wasn't. Some
Yeah.
days it was like every word was like, "Ah, pull it out of my head."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
can imagine. So it's not about the quantity, it's about the
No.
quality.
Right. Right. And I also tell people what I was working on is a first draft.
Yeah.
So it's not pretty.
Yeah.
These are not finished words. These are not words that I would bring out and show anyone because they're they're mostly I'm getting the idea of the story down on paper, and once it's on paper, then I can go back and do the edits. That at
Yeah.
least that's the way I work. Now, I met a couple of people there who kind of wordsmith as they go, and so they might only work on a page or 2 all day. But by the time they're done, that page or 2 is really nice. Whereas my several pages are not. But my process is I need to get it out,
Mm.
and then I go back and do all of the making it pretty and getting rid of the fact that I used the word big 3,000 times and all of
Yeah.
those things. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think I know what you mean. Getting it all done, getting the whole story in your
yes.
computer on the paper, and then work out the finer details.
Yes, because
Yeah.
I'll go back and sometimes I'll make little notes, like, I'll write a scene and I'll
Yeah.
realize, "Oh, I really need to have talked about this
Mm.
before."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'll make a little note, "Talk about this before chapter 32," and then I just move on rather than try to go back and figure out where am I gonna put that information. I'll work on that later.
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
I'm I just keep moving forward. I just keep moving forward until I finally have the book out on paper, and now I can go back and do all the fixes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what the editing process is for, isn't it?
Right. Right.
I
At
mean,
least it is for me.
yeah.
I don't care. I don't care if I just don't care. I have my commas in the wrong places. None of those things bother me. I just get it out.
Yeah.
And then I can work on all of that later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Do you usually have let it sit for a while? I know we've talked about it because it's something
Yeah.
lots of authors do, and then come back to
Yeah.
it later, and because then you are probably more able to spot, you know, things that went wrong, structures that went wrong.
Right. Places that need more,
Yeah.
because when you've let it sit and then you read it again. So my process is once the first draft is done, I let it sit.
Yeah.
Then I read it again.
Mhm.
And as I'm reading it, I will not make any changes to the manuscript, but I make notes in a
Mm.
notebook.
Mhm.
And it works for me. The only changes I will make is if it's an obvious spelling error or something. I'll go ahead
Yeah.
and make that quick change so that I don't miss it later. But I generally make no changes, and I just make all of my notes need more of this, less of this. I don't
Yeah.
like this person's name anymore. Let's change it. Those
Yeah.
kinds of things. And I write it all down. And then I usually let it sit for another couple of days.
Mm.
Then I start with my notes and I start fixing what I found. And then usually while I'm fixing what I found, there are other things that come to mind and I flesh it out. Then
Mm.
I do one more edit where I use um I use autocrit. So
Okay.
it's a I don't know, it's like a writer's you can put your whole book in and it gives you a rating and tells you
Mhm.
where your words weak and those kinds of things. And so I'll put it in there and try to find some of my very worst mistakes.
Yeah,
And at
okay.
that point, then I give it to my editor.
Okay. And do you also, because I haven't done that, but others do as well, read it out loud to yourself?
So I usually read it out loud to myself after I've given it to my editor.
Ah,
And my
okay.
editor then gives me more things. So then
Okay.
I do what she says. And after that, before I give it back to her, I read it out loud.
Mm. Mhm.
Because you do read it and go, "Oh, that doesn't sound right." Usually at that point, I'm not
Yeah.
fixing major plot holes because I've
Mhm.
found those already, but
Yeah.
I'm fixing where when read out loud, this sentence didn't make sense or the sounds together, there was too many this and you sound like it was like, "Okay, well, what do I need to do there to get rid of the fact that there's too many S's all in a row and
Yeah.
now we sound
Yeah.
like we're" so those kinds of things. Or you realize when you don't realize it any other way that you've got the same word 3 times in a paragraph,
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Makes
you
sense.
know? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it's okay if the word is "the," but it's not okay if the word is, "righteous." You don't wanna say that 3 times Like, so when you're reading it out loud, you do notice, "Oh, I've already used that word." And the reason you've used it again is because you have used it, and so it's on your brain, and then you use it again,
Mm.
and you use it again, and then you have
Yeah.
to stop that pattern, so, Yeah, I do like reading it out loud. I think it really helps. The other thing is that you can get some programs will read it out loud for you. And it sounds a little bit robotic, but that's actually not bad.
Yeah, but again, since we talked about audiobooks, I'm not sure if I would catch what I want to catch. You know what I mean? Because when I read it out loud for myself, if I do the reading, I think it's more probable that I will find the mistakes where it doesn't sound right. Not so much if someone else, meaning AI or whoever, is
Right.
reading it out to me, because I
Well,
think I couldn't concentrate then.
if you get poor AI to do it, so something that doesn't do the expression well, you do
Mm.
hear it.
Mm.
Because
Okay.
you're trying to focus on what are they saying, and then all of a sudden it'll be like, "That makes no sense at all." So you
Yeah.
play it over again, and it's like, "That really makes no sense at all," and so then you know to go back. If it's someone who has a really good reading voice and they're doing all the stuff, no, you'll miss it because you'll get
Mm.
right involved in the story. So I say use really poor AI
Yeah.
to
Okay.
listen or to read it yourself, yeah.
Okay, so which basically means get the good AI for your audiobook, get the bad
Yes,
AI for
right.
your editing process.
For your editing, and I think the reason is because you don't get as involved in the story. With
Yeah.
bad AI, you know the whole time what you're doing.
Yeah.
With good AI, you fall into the story and then you forget what you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
Not so
that's my
good.
yeah, that's what I say. That's what I'm sticking to.
Yeah. I mean, makes absolutely sense to me. Perfectly. Perfectly sense. And since we said we would talk about genres, the other people, the other writers, what were their genres they wrote in?
So, one was a playwright.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. His was a little he always had an element of, like, space or weirdness in it.
Mm.
Like, I can't even explain to you, but it was good. I enjoyed it. It was
Mhm,
just
mhm,
a little different.
mhm.
One was an environmental, so she was doing, like, young adult environmental stuff. So
Okay.
things like, um, global warming,
Mm.
the use of plastics, those kinds of things. So that's what came into her work.
Mhm.
Another it was it was amazing. She is an actress and a singer and a writer. And she
Mhm.
had created a one-act play, and she was taking that and turning it into a book, and it was
Oh.
kind of her story with a lot of embellishments.
Huh.
So and
Okay.
it was great. So she reads tarot cards. And he
Okay.
talks about how people go, "Ooh, tarot." They either like it or they don't like it. They don't know what it is. And she has this whole thing that she does that is really funny, but she also brings her dad into it because her dad is the one that taught her, and she and her dad had a difficult relationship. And so she
Mm.
brings him into it. And in a way, you see the healing that happens for her and all of this. It was really good,
Mhm.
but she's taking it from this one act play and turning it into a novel. So, I'm really
So
excited to
novel,
read that.
yeah, absolutely. Novel or memoir or a mixture?
I think it's gonna be a mixture.
Mm.
I'm looking forward to reading it, and then I'll tell you what it turns out to be. So,
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, here we are already cross genre, because
yeah.
genre we said is not so easy to pin down, is it?
It used to be. There was a time when people very much you wrote, historical fiction, period, or
Yeah.
or you wrote, mystery thriller, period.
Mm.
Or you wrote fantasy, period. And now there's romantasy, which is romance fantasy, and there's speculative historical fiction, and there's all of these crazy combinations. And when you ask people, I've noticed recently that a lot of the indie authors really like it when they have their own little brand that they've brought out.
Okay, going completely niche.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I write and then they name it and then they've come up with their own cute little name for it. It's like, wow, I think it's pretty cool, but it's not something that I've done. But I do like the fact that people aren't stuck in a box anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, boxes, we don't like them. We don't like labels either. But uh, we are back at the question of publishing, aren't
I
we?
know. So it's hard to find a publisher if you don't stick with the
Yeah,
normal, and
yeah,
it's hard to market it
yeah,
because
absolutely.
how do you find your people?
Yeah.
How do you explain to them that if you like this, you'll also like this? I think it gets a little
Mhm.
bit tougher, and then, like, you go onto Amazon and you're only allowed to put it in 3 categories. Which 3 do you choose?
Yeah. Mm, yeah.
So
Not a problem. And if you are marketing it in a bookshop, the bookshop owner will ask you, yes, and where shall I put it on the shelf?
where Yes, yes. So, do you want me to put it in historical fiction, or do you want me to put it in speculative fiction, or do you want me to put it in romance? And you're like, "Yes." And they don't have enough shelf space to put you all 3 places. So, I think it's really good in a lot of ways that we're opening up genre and allowing people to kind of write what they feel,
Mm,
and it's also then makes it really hard for the marketing aspect of the book. And you almost have to then pick one of those genres that you're gonna focus on for the marketing purposes.
yeah, absolutely. And you said the indie authors, or some of them, they love to create their own sort of subgenre.
Yeah.
Do you think that it is easier for them to, I don't know, create their own niche? Or is it easier for an established author because, who cares? It's a name everyone knows and they can write whatever they like and it probably gets sold within
Well,
2 days.
yeah, so people that have the big name and they've written, books that people, like, literally sit on the edge of their seat and can't wait until the
Yeah.
next one comes
Yeah.
out, and the pre-orders outsell anything that I'll ever sell in my life, right? Like, those people, you're right, they can write literally anything,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it will sell.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that indie authors, especially those who are willing to self-publish, and it's easy for them as well because they're unknown anyway. Whatever they start with, they're starting kind of from scratch. And, maybe it'll be the thing that makes them stand out from the crowd, that they have this
Hmm.
little
Good point.
little niche that's different from everyone
Mm.
else. Everyone else is writing, like, right now, romantasy is a huge thing, romance
Yeah. Yeah.
fantasy, right? It's huge. Everyone writes it. Well, if you could do your own spin on it and now you come up with a cool name, maybe it would set you apart from all those others. Now, if you were trying to get a publisher, it would not work at all because a publisher is not going to want to take a chance on some
No.
niche they've never heard of.
Yeah. No.
But as an independent, maybe, especially if you have some marketing chops behind you and you know what you wanna do in order to market the
Yeah.
book, yeah, it might work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. Because, I mean, it's all about the money in the end for the publishers. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
business, let's be honest here. I mean, on
right.
the one hand, I do understand their reluctance.
Mhm.
On the other hand, I often feel that they do underestimate their readers.
I do. I think that they often go with what they feel confident will sell based on what sold last year and the year before that, and they're not willing to see what their readers think of something new. I
Mm,
talk with a lot of indie authors, and most of the people who have read any of their books because of something that I've said,
mm,
or a review that I put out, often say to me, "Wow, that was a really good book. I would have never found it any other way." They can't be the only ones that feel that way, and so I feel
yeah,
like the publishers don't look at some of these, doesn't quite fit what they have,
yeah,
you know? But the readers out there want more than they're getting from those, which is why so many indie authors exist and do okay,
yep, yep,
you know?
absolutely.
Because they found their people who say, "Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I wanna read."
Yes, exactly. I mean, I'm one of them.
Yeah,
We have often spoken about it, and I've also spoken with others about it. I wouldn't have found most of the books I have read and the people I have spoken to without the podcast, and I'm grateful for that because Amazon would have
Right.
never suggested it. And since they are
Absolutely.
all written in English, I would never find them here in Austria in a bookshop.
Well, and publishers aren't touching them because
Oh.
they either don't touch on the subjects they want them to, or they touch on subjects they don't want them to, or they're too long, or they're too short, or they're too something. And, you have to have somehow figured out exactly what a publisher's looking for and then gotten it to them at the exact right moment. And so, yeah, I think, I understand, like you, that publishing is they're trying to make money. That's what, and
Yeah.
so they're a little bit afraid to go with something untried. Like they want to know, I'm going to make money on this book. Uh, and so it makes it hard if you are not writing to the commercial fiction with the topics that publishers are looking for today. And then unfortunately, you could write what they want today, and then next year when yours finally gets done and out there, that topic is no longer a topic, and now you're on to something else, and too late, you didn't get in fast enough. And so that's why I try to just write what's in my head. I just, this is what I'm writing, and then if it goes over, if a big publisher picked it up, I'm not gonna say no to that. But
Of course not.
I'm certainly not going to not go forward with my writing, and so I just keep putting it out there. If they don't want it, fine, I'll self-publish it, we'll move it on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also have to be careful because one of my guests said she knows of an author who got a contract with a publisher. And in the end, after, the editor got his or her hands on it, she didn't recognize her novel anymore.
Happens a lot. I talked with someone who had this book. They felt so good about it. They had someone very interested. They have this big, long conversation with them. They're sure they're going to get a contract. And then the big bomb drops, which is, we want you to change the ending, and here's what we want the ending to be. And they were like, that isn't the ending. And it was like, well, it has to be that if we're going to take it. And so they didn't sign the contract, and so, yeah, there's a lot of that. There's the we're getting rid of 2 of your 4 characters because we don't think readers want that many characters, those kinds of things. And I think we talked last time about, like, cover design and how, I have a friend who has a cover for a series of her books, and she doesn't like the cover. She hates the covers. Well, how do you go out and sell something that you don't like? Hi, here's my book. I hate it. Right?
Yeah.
I love the inside. Please ignore the cover. Like, that's just not. Yeah. And so
Not
those
really,
kinds
no.
of things. Yeah, those kinds of things bother me. It's one of the reasons
Yeah.
why I really think that I will probably always be hybrid published or self-published, where I have the final say and nobody can force me to change things that I don't feel comfortable changing.
Yeah. And looking back on your writing, would you say that you chose the genre, or did the genre choose you?
Genre chose me. Yeah, I didn't even think about genre when I was writing. My first book, I had an idea and I wrote it. Now I'm sitting there working with my editor and the publisher. We're getting things together, right? And they're like, "Okay, we need to pick what categories this goes in." And I'm like, "What?" I don't even know what categories they go in. And so, I had to have a lot of handholding and help because I was like, "Well, I don't know." I mean, I I always have a character, and the character pretty much tells me where they need to be. So when I came up, like, with Daughters of Green Mountain Gap, I knew that this was a granny woman, and based on the story she was whispering in my head, I knew it had to be in the latter part of the 19th century. Like, that's where it needed to be. And so I wrote it there. And yes, that makes it historical fiction, but I didn't write it because it was historical fiction. I wrote it because the character was telling me a story that just happened to be set in a
Mhm.
historical time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the one I'm writing right now is contemporary, and it's humor, and it's nothing like the others that I've written, but it's where this character needed to be.
Mm. Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you are mostly interested also in history, and I think it's also a reason why you set
Yeah,
it in the
I
past.
think so. I do. I love research. And
Mm.
so a historic setting gives me a lot of reason to research, which is
Yep.
nice because then I get to do 2 things I love, write and research. It's really kind of fun. Which is funny because I've talked with other authors who are like, "Oh, I hate the research part." And it's like, "Oh, no, no. I use a hashtag research junkie." I mean, that's what I am, and I love that. I have to force myself to stop. Like, I could keep going and never write. And it's like, "No, no,
Yeah.
no. We've got enough. Now we have to write," you know? Um, so yeah, I think that probably is part of it. I also know that I do not do place details well. I'm
Mm.
getting better at it. I am
Mm.
getting better at it, but especially in the first book, I just don't do time and place well in words. I do better with people and their internal thoughts and their dialogue. But then when it comes to describing things, I'm kind of like,
Mm.
yeah, well, who cares? Who cares? So it's cold. That's all you need to know. And so I tend to not do well with that. So having a historical background makes it easier because there's things that hey, look, if I put this stuff in, then it sets the place, and I don't have to
Yeah.
kinda create it out of my own head. So, I think maybe that's another reason why it was historical, was because I didn't have to, like, create place. I just let the history facts do it.
Yeah. But isn't it also something fantasy authors would do because they borrow sometimes, not all of them, but they
Yes,
borrow a lot from history,
they
don't
do.
they?
They do. They do. I would be a terrible fantasy writer, though, because there is so much interest in this world,
Mm.
and
Absolutely.
when I'm reading fantasy, I often skip that part. I kind of like, "Yeah, okay, okay, okay. Oh, there's the character again." Like, those things don't matter to me as a reader, so
Yeah.
it's really hard for them to matter to me as a writer.
Mm.
So I know what genres I cannot write. I don't think I would ever write a fantasy. I have read some that I really, really like, but I don't think that I am the right person to do
Mm.
that because it requires that you care too much about the world and what can and can't happen and
Yeah.
how it can and can't happen and all those things that I just don't care enough.
Mm.
I don't care enough when I'm reading it, and I'm certainly not gonna care enough when I'm writing it. So,
Mm. I also often wonder how and which genres find us as readers. I mean, you said it was like that for you as an
mhm.
author, but what about as a reader? I wondered it myself. Why is it that I like crime fiction? Why is it that I like crime fiction with a historical touch? Why is it that
Yeah.
what is it about it? Is it I don't know, the
I wonder.
atmosphere? Is it what is it?
Maybe. So, I mean, I wonder sometimes if it isn't things that you were exposed to young. So, maybe you were into the mystery stories when you were a kid and therefore it like follows you. Maybe it was an author that someone introduced you to that was so compelling
Hmm.
that you then like that genre because of it. I don't know, maybe it's
Mm.
the way your mind works. I mean, maybe it's just like, "Ooh, crime, whoo." I actually was talking to a friend the other day, and she says, "You're gonna think I'm a terrible person, but as I travel through North Carolina and I see all these beautiful, very dense trees and other things," she said, "Often I think you could lose a body in there." Like, if you killed someone, you could and it made me laugh because she's this sweet, and for her to be having those thoughts. So, maybe it's just the way your mind works, that you're somewhere and you think, "Oh, you could definitely hide a body in that trunk." My daughter, when she bought her first car, called me and said, "Oh, this is my car, da, 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 it was used, and this is my car. You could put 6 dead bodies in the trunk." I said, "Oh my God." So, maybe she should be a crime writer, right? Because
Yeah,
those are the kinds of things that come to her. So I don't know. That's a good question, though.
maybe. Yeah. But for me, there also is always the historical element. Again, it's not
Yeah.
just crime, it's the historical element, mostly 19th century, also i- between the wars, the
Yeah.
golden era, 20s, 30s. Maybe Agatha Christie is to blame for that.
Maybe.
The
Maybe. I
woman,
mean, it
that
could be.
that woman has a lot to answer for.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been Nancy Drew for me. I was a big
Yeah.
Nancy Drew reader as a kid because, that's Trixie Belden and Nancy Drew, two of my favorite, sleuths. But people do have that. I mean, it's a big genre, and it's a big TV genre as well, where
Mm,
people like
yeah,
this idea of fiction, crime
yeah,
fiction, and now even the true crime stories where people go back and
yeah,
find like true crime, and then they tell you the whole story in novel form, but it's nonfiction. So
yeah.
it's a big genre out there. So you aren't the only one who's like really bitten by that bug.
Mhm. I mean, don't get me wrong, I also enjoy other genres as well. I
Right.
mean, fantasy, yes, okay, yeah, I'm not that informed about fantasy, I have to admit it.
Right.
I read it if it's a good plot, why not? But it isn't the first book I would take up in a
Right.
bookshop.
Right.
Other genres, yeah, well, maybe for a time, I was very interested in horror, Stephen King, Dean Koontz, and so on.
See, I can't read those. Oh, they make me I can't sleep at night after I've read something like that, so
No, it was for a while, it was quite alright. I haven't read anything like that for a while. I mean, except those horror stories that came my way through the podcast, which were
okay.
actually good, I have to say. I also like those you call it speculative fiction. I would call it alternate history fiction.
Yes.
Those
Yeah.
I also enjoy them because the what
Mhm.
ifs,
Yeah.
you know, also those with a touch of little bit of horror,
Yeah.
because there was this young adult book, or it's two books actually, and the first one was called Red Nation, and it's set during the American Civil War, and they were talking about vampires and so on, and this played a huge part in the story. And I finished the first one, and then I found out that the second one was already out, so I didn't wait till I got my hands on the paperback. I downloaded it on my Kindle
Right.
because I couldn't wait to find out
Right.
how the story
How it
continues.
well, and so I've read 2 books recently that had vampires in them, and I was shocked that I enjoyed both because I immediately think, "Oh, vampires, I'm not gonna like this story at all." And and it's not true. I've actually enjoyed both of them. One of them was an FBI agent who sees a vampire or a werewolf vampire, I think it was, and they kind of help them, but then leave the scene, like no one's allowed to know they really exist.
Ah,
And then
okay.
another one, um, I don't know, it like brought in history, and yeah, it was really cool. So it's surprising to me when I like those kinds of surprises though.
Mhm.
I'll hear from someone, they wanna be on the podcast, I'll say, "Sure, send me the book." I read the book, and sometimes before I get started, I've already thought, I bet I'm not gonna like this one." And then I enjoy it, and I think, "Oh, isn't that pleasant? I'm so glad that I actually liked something that's way outside of my normal reading," which is why I love doing my podcast,
Mm,
is that I get handed books that I would never, ever pick up on my own.
exactly. Books I wouldn't even know about.
Right, right, and even if I knew about them, I might say, "Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
it has vampires, I'm not reading it." And yet, because it was someone that hoped to be on my show, it was like, "Okay, yeah, let me read the book," and it was like, "Oh, it really is quite good." So,
Mhm.
I'm learning that I have to stop prejudging.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
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 And I really recommend that other people Like I know a lot of people that really have a genre. Oh, I only read, and they have whatever their genre is. I really recommend that on occasion you step out of that, or go get in a book club that requires you to read, something that someone else suggested. Because when you broaden yourself that way, you might discover that you really do like other things a
Yes.
lot, or maybe discover another author, or discover something
Mhm.
else. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely true. That brings me to my next question. Do you have at least 2 recommendations for us?
Yes, I do. Now, unfortunately, I read them both on my Kindle, and my Kindle is black and white, so I just
Mm.
printed the covers so that we can see
Oh,
what they look like.
oh, yeah.
All right. So the first one it's The Girl of Many Crowns.
Yeah, we can't see
Is
that
that
a little
there?
bit over. No, other.
There we go.
Yep, The Girl of Many Grounds. Okay.
Okay, by D.H. Morris. It is based on a true princess. It turns out that D.H. Morris is related to this princess, but she found out about her doing family history research and then wrote this incredible novel.
Okay.
I enjoyed it thoroughly. And so this is very much my genre, the historical fiction. I really loved it, and it was strong woman character. Now this
Okay,
other
can you
one,
show
yeah,
show
go
us
ahead.
show us the cover
Yeah,
again
yeah,
for over, little bit? Yep. Okay. Yes, thank you. Interesting
okay.
one. Yep, absolutely.
Now the other one is really crazy because it is so not my normal genre, and it is called The Girl Who Broke the Dark, and it is a fantasy,
Ah, okay. The
and it
Girl Who
is by
Broke the Dark.
Evelyn Puerto,
Mhm,
and it is part of a series. She now has 2 more. I don't happen to know those 2 titles. I haven't read them yet, but I I fell in love with these characters,
mhm.
and this was the first fantasy that I had read since telling people I didn't like fantasy. I
Okay.
don't really like fantasy, and then I read this and it was like, "Okay, I'm gonna have to change that," because I actually really, really loved this book and have since loved others. So, those are the 2 that I would highly recommend. The Girl Who Broke the Dark by Evelyn Puerto and The Girl of Many Crowns by D.H. Morris.
Mhm. Good to know. Sounds intriguing. And you had did you have now, one of the authors on your show?
I've had both of them on the
Both of them.
show, although yeah, they've both been on the show and they're both out already. So, yeah.
Mhm,
Um, I just found both of those stories to be very intriguing. They both have strong women characters. They're
mhm,
both so vastly different, and yet I enjoyed both of them so thoroughly. So,
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's always interesting. I mean, strong female characters, they're always intriguing.
Yeah.
They're always underestimated, and it's always interesting when men say, "Oh, I was a bit reluctant writing a female character because, blah, blah, blah," and yet they can do it quite well.
Yeah.
I mean, let them write. I mean, it would mean as a woman you can't write a male character either.
Well, and so you and I have talked about that before, the
Yeah.
whole idea of, well, you can't write it if you aren't it. And it's like, well, then that
Yeah.
really limits what I can do. And really, it gets rid of a lot of genres completely because let's think about fantasy. Nobody's that, right? Like whatever they've come up with in their head, nobody's that. And then history, how do you write about history? Because I didn't live it.
Yes. Nope.
I can't. I wrote one about World War II and about a soldier. Well, I've never been a soldier. I've never been a man, and I've never been in World War II. So should I have not written the book?
Yep.
And the answer
Exactly.
is no. Can write the book because I understand human emotion, and as long as I keep what I do know real, and
Exactly.
you do research, you find out things, you talk to people who are men who have been soldiers. You can do that, and so I don't know. I And then I hear things like, well, you shouldn't write people of color if you aren't a person of color. The people of color should write the book, and it's like, but what if they're not? What if they're not writing the book? And really, am I only allowed to have characters who are my color and my nationality. Like, that would be very boring.
It would.
So I think that there's ways to do it and there's ways not to do it. You have to be careful that you're not being stereotypical.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
that's the
that
point. Yeah.
you know, that you're not doing something that pushes along a negative stereotype. You don't want to do that, especially if you aren't of whatever group it is you're writing about. But my last novel, I talked about Cherokee Indian,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm not Cherokee, but
Yeah.
but I did a lot of research, and everything that I talked about them was very positive in terms of, you know, how they lived their lives and what they did in terms of medicine and what they did in terms of healing and
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel like in any way I usurped any power, nor did I push along negative stereotypes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if we limit ourselves to the things we know and we have experienced, what is there to write about your autobiography? Because, like you said, I didn't live during the Second World War. I'm not a
Right.
man. I
Right.
am not a soldier, not a doctor, whatever. So it's very
Right.
limiting and it gets boring quite fast.
Right. I mean, I've been a homemaker except for writing. And so I could talk about authors. That's it. And mothers. And now grandmothers. But after a while, that would get boring. People would stop reading my books. Oh, Teri's going to write another book about being a mother. You know, the
Been there,
first one
done
was
that.
all we wanted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean,
you know,
seriously.
like I said, I think there's something to it where you want to at least have a reason why you're writing. Like something has drawn you to that.
Yeah.
And therefore you're going to do what you can to do the best with it. Like, I don't think that you should just open up a history book and point and say, "Oh, yeah, I think I'll write about, you know, Czechoslovakia in, you know, 1827." I mean, I would think that you would want a reason why you were doing, like something has come up and you thought,
Yeah.
that is the coolest fact that I have ever seen, and now I need a story that I can use this fact that's going to be the big change for the story. Then I think that you should be able to do it. I do kind of fear the idea of, oh, nobody's written about this period of time, I think I'll do it. You know, I don't know that you'll do a good job that way. You know, I think you
Yeah.
need to have some kind of passion about it other than, oh, let's see, no one's written about this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, also as a reader, I mean, there are those who write, I don't know, reviews, and they write, maybe you've come across them as well. Oh, I mean, I read this book and it's so unbelievable. This is completely fictional.
Yes,
Excuse
that's
me.
why it's
You
called
just,
fiction.
yeah, fiction book. It's not
Fiction.
non-fiction. It's not history. It's not whatever.
I saw one where it was like, it's like the author was just making this up as they went along.
Yeah.
Yes, they were. That's what fiction authors do. But, you know, I wrote that my first book was about Ukrainian women, and I had someone leave me a review that they were very disappointed to learn that I was not Ukrainian. So sorry.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, yeah.
You're right. You're right. I'm not Ukrainian, but I had a story that someone told me that was so compelling that I had to write the backstory to what had happened to her.
Yeah.
And then I did copious amounts of research to make sure that I got those characters right. That I made sure that they were believable and real, and that when you walked away from it, you felt like you had met 3 Ukrainian women.
Yeah.
You know, that was my point. And so, you know, yeah, I'm sorry that it offended them that I wasn't Ukrainian, but
Oh, please, yeah, whatever. I mean, she just made the shit up. Yes, of course, like you said, she's a fiction author. Of course, she makes the shit up. I mean,
that's
she
what
pretends.
happens.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, also those actors and actresses, they pretend to be. That's the definition of acting. Pretend.
Yes, pretend.
Pretend
Yes.
to be someone you are not. I mean,
Yes.
as good as Meryl Streep might be, she isn't a lawyer, she isn't an editor, she
Right.
isn't whatever.
Any of the things that she's ever played, right?
Yes. So what? That's the whole point of it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that I'm hoping some of that is going away a little bit, that people are starting to relax a little bit more about the idea that
I
we
think
can
so.
move a little bit outside of, who you are and be able to write.
I think so. I think so. We are on the way slowly, 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 because it's not so harsh as it was
It
few
was harsh for
years,
a while.
yeah,
Yeah. It
ago.
was really
Now it's changing.
I think there were enough authors who started to stamp their feet and say this
Yeah,
is ridiculous.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I'm writing a good story, and if it was believable to you, what difference does it make?
Yeah,
As like I
exactly.
said, as long as you are not pushing forward negative stereotypes.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
if you're pushing forward negative stereotypes, then you might want to think twice about what you're doing because, is that really what you want to do? The only time that I think that that would be okay if you have negative stereotypes is if in the end you see the truth. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you see someone who has been affected by these negative stereotypes, but
Hmm.
then you see them grow and become and move beyond what people say they are, and then you see the truth of them. That's fine. But I just wouldn't I don't think that you should write a person of color and then have all of the negative stereotypes that go with that and then
Yeah,
leave it.
yeah,
That to me that's wrong. But
yeah. I
as long
agree.
as long as as long as you're making your people real,
Hmm.
then I think you're probably okay.
I mean, if you do incorporate a racist in your story, because such people do
Right.
exist, such people
Exist.
did exist. I mean, yes, it might be offensive reading what they spout, but that's what they did and what they
Right.
do. So,
Right. So it's like what do you as long as you've resolved it in the end,
yeah,
where either they've been silenced
yeah,
or they've changed
yeah,
and they recognized, I wouldn't want to leave it that way.
yeah,
I think that would be the thing is you don't want to leave it that way because then the book is just a racist tome where people get to
mhm,
say ugly things and.
yeah,
So I think that
yeah.
you need to make sure that people know that what they're reading is a bad character.
Yes, exactly.
Because we all have them. I mean, you have to have your bad character in the book. You have to have
Of
someone
course,
that you don't like.
of course. I mean, you have to have the villain
Yeah,
one way or the other, because you have the protagonist and the antagonist, and sometimes depends on the time it is set in. It's
right.
harsher than in others. And also the setting, like you said, it depends where it is, when it is set. So you have those people. You had those people. Also, you can't write about, let's say, Nazi Germany without the Nazis.
Right. Right. Like how do you've got to it's very difficult to write a World War II book that doesn't at least explain a little bit about
Yeah.
Nazis. Like
Yes.
how could you do that?
Yeah.
And it
Absolutely.
needs to be done. I mean, it has to. That's part of what World War II was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's
So
the whole reason, one of the reasons it happens.
right,
And
right,
you can't leave that out. How are you supposed to write it? Not even if you set it, let's say, in Asia, because it did also have
yes,
repercussions for Asian people, because we had
yes,
Japan, who was part of the Axis, uh, and
right. Right. So I think that, that kind of brings us a little bit to the idea of like the cancel culture and the idea that, oh,
mm,
well, we can't talk about certain things. And I am completely opposite of that. I think that
yeah,
we need to continue talking about things and we need to continue putting it out there and we need to continue
yeah,
making sure that people don't forget what
yeah,
happened and that we get to see the ugliness of it because
yeah,
we don't learn as a people, we do not learn from goodness and beauty. We learn
yeah,
from trying not to be ugly and horrible. I mean, that's
hmm,
that's really what happens. And so if we hide all of the ugly and horrible, then it's gonna happen again. That's what I mean, history repeats itself over and over. I've had people read books of mine, historical fiction, and they say things like, wow, that could be happening today. And it's like, yes, because despite the fact that however many 135 years have passed, we haven't changed much as humans.
Yeah, human nature doesn't change that much, does
It
it? That's
doesn't
all.
change very much.
Yeah, that's
I
the
mean, we
reason
can
why
right.
we
I
have.
mean,
Yeah,
if you
go
look
on.
biblically, you go all the way back to the first, two brothers and one killed the other one. I mean, it started pretty early on, depending on where you believe the world started. But you see what I'm saying? Like, this isn't new,
No,
right?
not. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely not. I mean, the reasons for our actions, they remain the same. I mean, Shakespeare is still very popular. Why is he popular?
yes,
He was a
because he's
chronicler of human emotion, the
yes,
human nature.
yes, yeah.
So
Yeah, and people
yeah,
understand the stories because they can see themselves, they can see their friends, they can see other people in their lives, and they say, "Ah, I understand this story." And I think historical fiction does that a lot, which is another
mm,
reason I think I enjoy it, is you can see the human condition then. And so many people talk about, well, those were the good old days. "Oh, in the good old days." And it's like, well, yeah, they were good for in some ways, but not in others. They still had, like people talk about right now, "Oh, in the 1950s when things were so easy." And it was like, yeah, in the 1950s, you go talk to a Black family that had to ride in the back of the bus, not enter a restaurant, and couldn't drink out of the same water fountain. And they don't have the same feeling about the 1950s, right? So I think that we have that tendency to look to the past and then glorify it and think it was
yeah.
something better than it was. I often tell people that, like the book that I wrote, Daughter's Green Mountain Gap, it's about medicine. And people will say, "Oh, we should go back to herbs." And it's like, mm, maybe a little bit. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with, like trying to keep yourself healthy. On the other hand, I do not want to go back to a time where they did bloodletting for diabetes.
Neither would I.
Right? And so I think that we have to be careful that we don't glorify what the times in the past used to be. And then we also don't glorify, like, you don't wanna make the Nazis look like the good guys. Like, you have to be careful
No.
that nobody would on that instance, but like that, there are times where you can kinda twist things. I think you need to make sure that you're being well-rounded, maybe? When
Yeah.
you're exploring topics that have many sides to them, try to be a little more well-rounded. Make sure that you have characters that see things a little differently so that you can kinda get a feeling for what's happening in that time period. I don't know.
A critical eye.
Yeah,
Use that, and like you said, don't try to glorify the past because it might have been glorious for some parts of
but not for
society,
others. Right,
but not for others, not for all of us. And
right,
come to think of, let's say, Vienna at the turn of the century, oh, it was absolutely wonderful for the rich and affluent. The majority of the people who worked in factories and so on, not so glorious at all.
right, right. But what do we hear about? We hear about, rich Vienna. And we all wish
Ex-
that we could have been in rich Vienna. And it was like,
Yes,
well,
of
sure, who wouldn't
course.
want to be in rich Vienna? But would you have liked to have been the scullery maid in rich Vienna? And the answer is probably not.
Would you have liked to be the daughter of a rich man who is more or less cursed, forced to marry the son
To
of
marry
another?
someone for so that they had a good alliance and the money stayed in the family. Like, is that
Exactly.
really what you want? And the answer is no. In fact, the girl with many crowns, she's a princess and she's forced to marry. Her father's the king and he forces her to marry to make alliances, and that's part of the big thing in all of this. So yeah, I mean, those things happen, and if you're the king, it's good. Right? Oh, look
Yeah.
what we just did. We've now increased our kingdom by 30%. Isn't this fabulous? Right? But is it good for the princess who is now married to a man 40 years her senior?
Not so much. No.
She's 16, he's 56. Like, is this really good for her? Probably not so much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, a lot to think about, not just
Just
using your pink-colored glasses when you look at the past. Also not fall into the trap of looking at the past through the lens of our time.
right.
I mean, of course, we have no other eyes than ours to look at the past, but we have to remind ourselves that now are different times than they were, let's say, 100 years ago.
Right. And to try not to judge people based on where we are now versus where people were then. You
Exactly.
gotta have to judge you have to kinda judge people in the past based on what was going on in the past. And then
Exactly.
say, "Okay, based on what was going on in the past, was
Yeah.
this person a good guy or a bad guy? And would this guy do well in the future? Maybe not so much because he would need to do a lot of changing, but maybe if he were brought up now, he would be a good guy because do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
what would you have been like or I have been like 150 years ago? I have no idea. I would have been a
No,
product of what I was brought up in, just like I am now.
absolutely. And it would have been vastly different for me than it is now because my family came from farmers
Yeah.
and laborers. So that's, or that would have been my life
Well,
as well.
and 150 years ago, it's not like you would have ever gotten an education.
Exactly.
You might have
Maybe,
never learned to read.
maybe just the basics. Because,
Maybe basics.
yeah, maybe basics because the 18th century it started with schools in Austria,
Okay.
but just like I said, the basics, a bit, a bit of math, a bit of writing,
Re
mainly writing
and
your
reading.
name and so on,
Yes.
and basics in reading
But most
because
most
yeah,
women most women didn't go to never graduated like a high school program.
yeah, of
Like,
course,
it would have been enough to maybe read the Bible or to do, some basic, um, bookkeeping for your farm or whatever, and
mm,
then that was about the extent of it. It wasn't about so you wouldn't be who you are.
yeah, exactly. And when we think of the past, it's always astonishing when when we speak of education and so on, and we say you do realize in Austria, it's a bit different than it is, for example, in Germany, because what we have is an obligation to educate, meaning it could also happen at home. It doesn't
Right,
have to be at school. Completely different in Germany. Education has to happen at school in Germany. You are not allowed to teach your children at home. And also a reason why uh, it was so important for Maria Theresia was because, like I said, you needed people for doing a little bit of math, a bit basics again, because you needed laborers, not just in
right,
farming, but also uh, in the first sort of factories. Weren't factories like
right,
we know them because the system was a bit different, but you needed them to understand the instructions or read warnings and whatever.
right.
But that's it. And we had our, let's say, summer holidays because the children were needed
On the
to bring,
farms to
yes, yeah, to
to
bring
bring
in the
in
crops.
the crops and right, my mom so my mother's 82, and she grew up on a farm, and she grew up in a farm area, and there was a large Amish population there,
Mm,
and the Amish often missed large portions of the school year because crops were coming in, and all the children stayed home because they
yeah,
were required to be there. Then when that was done, they would be back at school until the 6th grade, and after the 6th grade, they did not attend school in a public school system anymore, then they stayed in their own. But, but it was mom said you always knew when the crops were coming in. It was like, "Oh, school started the 1st of September, it's toward the end of September, and it's now time to bring in whatever it is."
yeah,
And for maybe 10 days, those kids would not be in class because
yeah.
they were
They were
required
needed.
to be on the
Yep.
farm. Right,
Yeah, to harvest.
right.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also, I mean, when some people look at the Amish, they always see, yeah, community, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's not all that it's made out to
No,
be,
no,
especially if you're a
isn't that
woman.
but isn't that true of, any community or
Yeah,
any
yeah,
society? Like
absolutely.
I can say some wonderful things about living here in the United States, and I can tell you some bad things about living here in the United States,
Yeah,
and I suspect you can do the same about where you live. And so
yeah,
I don't I don't believe that we've ever figured out utopia. And not only that, but let's be honest, your utopia and mine wouldn't necessarily be the same,
exactly. Yeah,
right?
absolutely,
So
absolutely
you
agree.
can create a utopia, but does that mean everyone is going to feel that it's utopia? Probably not,
Mm.
because, you know, my utopia would be a certain way, and I'm sure there are certain people who would come to it and go, "This is not fun. This is
Yeah,
not what I wanted at all," right? Like,
probably not. No,
yeah. So,
probably not. Absolutely not. No. Terry, anything more we should
I
tell our listeners?
I don't think so. I think we've done a pretty good job today of, like, really delving in. Although, if you're a writer, find yourself a residency.
Mm,
Like, I think that changed the direction of what's going on in my head. I've gone from being someone who couldn't figure out what to do next to I have so
mm.
many ideas that I now have to say, "Shh, I can only do so many at a time." So yeah, I would say that run right out and get yourself a residency. That's or and if you can't get in one, make one. Like,
Mm.
go find a Airbnb someplace for 2 weeks and don't answer your phone.
Yeah, don't get distracted.
Don't answer the phone.
Mm.
Don't plan on big meals, eat from the farmer's market so that you don't take a lot of time eating. That's
Yeah,
you know?
let someone else take care of your cats and dogs.
Absolutely, and your plants. Yeah,
Yeah, otherwise you won't get any work done, especially with the cats.
absolutely.
Absolutely not. We will meet again, won't we?
Absolutely, this has been fun.
Yep. Same here. Dear listeners, like us, subscribe us, and of course, tune in again. We'll be back.
We will.